The winner of this year's Nobel Peace Prize is Liu Xiaobo, a Chinese activist for democracy. Right now, though, he is serving an 11-year prison sentence for a paper he wrote calling for free speech and multi-party elections. Today, President Obama, last year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, called on China to release Xiaobo. Beijing has since condemned the award, even made a formal protest to Norway's ambassador. Now, China's reaction is no surprise, but it does highlight the issue for the need for universal human rights. Javier El-Hage, General Counsel for the Human Rights Foundation, joins us now live from New York. Mr. El-Hage, thanks for joining us today. What's your reaction to learning an activist is in prison for basically writing a paper advocating democracy and free speech?
Well, let me stress this. Today's decision of the Norwegian Nobel Committee is a huge victory for human rights. China is the single biggest dictatorship on earth right now. So the fact that the award was given this time to an emblematic figure within this country is just justice being made on human rights in the world.
You know, a lot of people have been clearly very critical of this. He is in prison right now for 11 years, sentenced for simply writing a paper.
That's true. The paper you're mentioning is the Charter 08, which is a paper that was done in the year 2008, inspired on the Charter 77, asking the Chinese government this time to release political prisoners, asking for freedom and democracy, asking for a complete transition of the Chinese the Chinese system, not just to economic freedom, but to political freedom, which is basic for the existence of human rights in a country. Charter 77, let me tell you, was a political movement in 1977 in Czechoslovakia at that time, and was led by Vaclav Havel, who is currently the chairman of the Human Rights Foundation. And this is the inspiration that this new movement in 08 got in China to release this paper. And that's why Mr. Liu was imprisoned a couple of years ago.
Last year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, of course, President Obama today called on China to immediately release him, writing that over the last 30 years, China has made dramatic progress in economic reform and improving the lives of its people. But this award reminds us that political reform has not kept pace and that the basic human rights of every man, woman, and child must be respected. You know, you're an organization fighting for human rights. You think most people around the world would want that. How do we, as just regular people, how do we change things? How do we get countries like China to respect basic human rights?
Well, one very important thing that we must point out of this particular decision today that affects public opinion around the world is that in recent years, the Nobel Peace Prize was given to political activists, environmentalists, last year to a public official, and only this year it is really encouraging and about time that the prize goes to a human rights defender, to a human rights advocate, and that is, I think, the biggest encouragement for human rights that you can give to regular people around the world. Don't forget that the world it's globalized as never before in these days, that the internet reaches every single corner on earth, and that it is important that the public gets a perception of proportions about human rights violations. And it's clear that China represents the most appalling situation of human rights violations in the world.
All right, Javier El-Hage, thanks so much for sharing your opinion with us today.